Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing well. This is episode 38 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself, Rugby H, as well as the QB lads. First of all, man, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Tim. We just watched the SEVENS final. There's also a heap of Super Rugby that took place over the weekend. Plenty of close games and also some unpredictable ones. Of course, a massive upset in Super Rugby concerning the Crusaders, which we will get to in a very short moment.
Exactly. But yeah, no, let's just dive into this. Again, before we do, make sure obviously to like the video, guys, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. But yeah, in terms of Super Rugby for this week, in terms of Super Round in Melbourne, the first game that we did have was, of course, Highlanders versus Blues. Again, this was always going to be a good game no matter what, because both these sides did win their first game within round one. But of course, the scoreline did end up being 29 points for the Highlanders, 37 to the Blues. So yeah, it's one of those where I think it was kind of it was like a it was a it was like a two-ended game really in a way, like where both teams, like whenever one team scored, the other one came straight back into it. So it was good. I thought, yeah, just a very competitive one. Again, I think just the Blues ran away with it really in the second half because the Highlanders weren't able to kind of match up with them in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think what else in terms of the tries. I mean, there's some good tries in there, but it's not like I wasn't outstanding. There wasn't like an outstanding try, I'd say, in my opinion. I'd say looking back at this game. But I guess a 2-2 had a good game. 3 tries to him. But I mean, what was your take on that game?
I felt like the Highlanders showed huge improvement from what we saw last year. And I mean, Reece Patchell at 10
Yeah,
seems like he
he's
is really going to be a good option. That was a beautiful little try assist
to
that
be
he got
fair, that
himself. And
try.
then,
Yeah,
am
that's
I
right.
refreshing the memory?
Yeah.
But the Blues, the fact that they won it by 8, I mean, that will definitely help them in the long run. They don't get the bonus point, which now means that we've seen a few changes in terms of the overall table. But the Highlanders, I think, yeah, they had a very good performance. I thought that Jacob Ratamaitabuki-Nepkins at 15 stepped up. And like you said, Satutu was on fire, getting himself 3 tries. So I think that's now 5 throughout 2 games
Yeah.
of Super Rugby Pacific, which is going to be pretty hard to catch. Although with the high scoring games that we're seeing, I feel like there's a good chance we see some players catching up soon.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'll be the top try scorer towards the end of the season. I'd be pretty surprised if that is the case. But no, he's been very impressive so far as a 2-2. I mean, and again, obviously all of the All Blacks coaches were there to kind of witness all the games, and it's obviously a good thing for Tutu that he was able to kind of perform on the day. So that's obviously just a good indication for maybe things to come later down the line when it comes towards selections. But yeah, no, just a good game overall. Like you said, the Highlanders I thought were pretty impressive. Reece Patchell, that like assist he had from the beginning, and even like the 1-2 where it was the Fakatava assist where he kind of did the grubber kick inside and he scored the try. There's some good actually plays from both of them. Like they look like it's a good combination that they're starting to build there in terms of their chemistry. So from a Highlanders perspective, I'd be very happy just because you want to have a solid basis in terms of your 9-10 because that's really how just having that is what's really going to determine if you do well or not, I think, throughout the course of the season. But yeah, no, anyway, we'll move on towards the next game, which was Rebels versus the Western Force. Rebels winning this 48 points to 34, which is, I mean, this was an impressive game. I wasn't actually even planning to do a live stream on this on my channel, but, by the request of a few people on the thing, they're like, you might as well just do it. I'm like, okay, I'll shoot for the moon. And yeah, I was happy I did it because it was a great game to watch and just a ton of tries. And the Rebels finally learned kind of from their previous mistakes in the last round that what I said in the previous preview was that they can score tries. They just weren't clinical in the last one against the Brumbies. They made sure that they were clinical in this one, and yeah, they're brilliant throughout it. I mean, Andrew Kellaway, I thought had a very good game for himself. I thought Connor Gordon was good for the Rebels. Filippo Dangado was good in terms of that because he was shifted towards the 11 spot for this game rather than the 13 he played in the first one. So yeah, a lot of positives I say for the Rebels in that one. But yeah, what was your kind of thoughts on that game overall?
Well, like you said, the Rebels, they remembered how to score tries. That was something that in the first game up against the Brumbies, they really struggled with, not crossing the try line once. Whereas in this game, crossing it multiple times within mainly that second half as well. Like at the start, it seemed to be a bit back and forth, but then the Rebels just gaining that momentum and then slowly just continuing to be able to build it. Like Western Force, 34 points on the board. I don't think they'll be hugely disappointed, although they will feel like they let that game slip away a little bit throughout some of those later stages, but still getting 34 points on the board's probably not a bad day at the office for a side that did lose their first contest. So, yeah, both making improvements. I look forward to seeing if they can continue those improvements next week, because that's when the real test comes in.
Yes, that's definitely for sure. But yeah, good on then towards the Saturday games that we had across Super Rounds. The first one being, of course, Mono Pacifica versus Fiji Endura, and this was a great game. I thought, again, a lot of people I think going into this would have said Fiji Endura to win, but Mono Pacifica were impressive in that first game against the Hondas, and they proved it once more with a win against them, 39 points to 36. I mean, it was one of those where I think that the Mono Pacifica kind of controlled the game throughout most parts of it, but they kind of let the Fiji Endura come back into it towards the end, and that's what it kind of made it a bit, nervous, or kind of nervous for Mono Pacifica fans going into those kind of last 10 minutes, because Fiji had a chance, the Fiji Endura had a chance of winning that, but some good tries though, some really good tries in that game, and that's kind of what you expect really from these two when it's so open play, Fiji Endura would just kind of do their offloading game, and it's good rugby. But what was your thoughts on that one?
I think Pacific Island Rugby, they showed off exactly what it can be like, and they showed exactly why we have two Pacific Island sides in Super Rugby Pacific, because they just have such flair, such entertainment, and the crowd were loving it. I think there were quite a few Moana Pacifica fans in attendance, same with the Fijian drawer, but you can never count Fiji out. And they've proven that time and time again. I talked about it just before they started scoring their tries. They've scored 3 tries in 5 minutes before in a game, which is why when they're considered an underdog, they're never quite as much of an underdog as other sides, because when they start upping that tempo and when they start feeling like they're going to take out a win, they just keep on motoring. I feel like there were a few players that stepped up well for Moana Pacifica as well as the drawer, and the future's looking bright for these two sides. I'm very intrigued to see what Moana Pacifica can do up against the victorious Rebels next week. I feel like that is a game that we're going to get to see exactly how these two sides matched up, because it is going to be the first time that we see Moana Pacifica take on a purely Australian side. Of course, the Fijian drawer, for a start, they were playing in the NRC, but now, of course, they're home in Fiji. I can't imagine what the crowd would have been like if this game had taken place in either Samoa or Fiji, rather than in Melbourne for 20 people, but it would have been absolutely insane. We'll speak about it very quickly before we go on to the next game. Tim, would you consider the Super Round a success in terms of, one, the games played, in terms of entertainment value, and then two, would you consider them a success for the Super Round for the attendance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very easy to answer. Where in terms of the games, yes, it was definitely what we expected, and kind of we got more than actually what we expected in this round, because a lot of the games, of course, were high scoring. Some came obviously close down towards the line. Some obviously still, kind of had some teams had a comfortable victory, but still it was some good rugby played throughout the whole whole rounds. But of course, when it comes towards the attendance, it's not what people imagined in terms of what you would say is a super round. It's not like what you're kind of expecting in that way. And again, we've seen it's not really a shock, because we've seen this in the past 2 years in Melbourne as well. So it's not like anything's changed. It's just more like where better rugby was played, and hopefully that convinces people more to come again for next year. So at least that's the good thing from this, is that you want to make sure the rugby's good, because if that's not good, then that just immediately affects the second point which you made in terms of the attendance. So I think it's one of those which there's a lot to be worked on, I'd say, on that standpoint, but no, there's a lot of benefits, I think, throughout what we saw.
And just a note about the tries and the points, lowest scoring game had 58 points in it. So the fact that that is the lowest, and every team apart from the Brumbies were able to bring up 20 plus points, at least at most times throughout a game, you didn't quite know who was going to win it. I think the only game that we knew was probably Chiefs Brumbies, but that was only really in the second half when the Chiefs started running away. At halftime, it still seemed like the Brumbies had a bit of late fight with that last minute try. But yeah, overall, I think entertainment wise, it was there. I just don't know why we're still persisting with Melbourne. I feel like have a super round somewhere that you can get 20,000+ in attendance. And I know that may sound not that many for a Northern Hemisphere I guess, viewer because they're like, well, the Six Nations, we get 50,000 at a game. And most Six Nations games are sold out pretty much instantly.
Yeah,
But
instantly.
in this case, they just need to find a way of, I don't know whether it's promoting it more in Melbourne or whether they just need to find another region. Like, I'm sure, next year, maybe if you have to keep it in Australia, why not have it in Queensland?
Yeah.
Suncorp Stadium. Could that be an option? Because I know that the Reds fans would turn up, definitely after some of the performances that we've seen from them. Whether or not it's too NRL based at this time of the year might be the problem. But they've got to do something. I feel like it's hurting what could be a very awesome round and be a huge atmosphere to like dwindling it just a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those where like if you were to host it, I'd say definitely Brisbane would be probably the best I would host it if it was in Australia, because like you said, the Queensland fans normally do pretty well actually in terms of their attendance when it comes towards games. But yeah, I mean, like if you were to go across the land, obviously towards New Zealand, then like there's not really one stadium which I'd be like, oh, it's that you could probably do it in. Like you could maybe say like Christchurch, but again, Christchurch is probably too small maybe for the amount of people. But again, it would make it. You could probably get the exact amount that you want in terms of making it full attendance, because obviously it's a small stadium. Like it's like 12 or 15K, I think, that stadium. It's not a big one.
I think they'd be more likely to do it in Auckland if they were going to do it in New
exactly.
Zealand.
You want to go for the market, so I understand. Like, but that's the thing, is that I wouldn't do it in Eden Park though, because you're not going to fill the stadium. So that's where I think
they don't in Melbourne. So
yeah, so it's one of those like where I wouldn't do it in Eden Park, but you could maybe do what they did in the first round, where you go to gosh, I keep forgetting the city's name, but where did the Blues play against Fiji during the first round? It was
in Whangarei.
Yeah, like something like that. Like the crowd there actually looked pretty good. It was a good sized stadium. Like it's small, of course, but you're gonna get people around the whole thing. It makes it kind of like that family atmosphere, which is what you want. You could even put it at the Mount Smart if you really wanted to. Yeah, there's a lot.
Just
There's a
to
lot of
also add, I know that I was mentioning about having it in Queensland, and I think you'll be in agreement. They've got to try and kind of cater to their NRL audience as well, if it is in Australia.
yeah.
So one of the matches that I think they should do is Reds versus Waratahs, because then you're Queensland versus New South Wales, which is your state of origin kind of battle as well, which is quite a hefty one. In New Zealand, I think that a New Zealand derby would also be required, depending on whereabouts they are, just to try and really sell it to people. That's the hardest thing, trying to get people in through the gate. No matter how big your stadium is, you need to get them at the game so that they are enjoying it, buying your bevies and your chips. Bloody love a good pack of chips.
Exactly. But that's the thing. It's one of those like where I wouldn't mind actually seeing a New Zealand derby. I mean, I was thinking of like probably the big one, which you could do is like Chiefs Blues for like in terms of this season, or even like Crusaders Blues or Crusaders Chiefs in a way like that. One of those like games could be a good one to have. But yeah, no, it'll be fascinating to see what they do, obviously, because again, we don't know obviously if they'll continue this going on in the future, because again, with Melbourne, of course, having a bit of uncertainty around the Melbourne Rebels, then there is, of course, the possibility the location may be moved. So we'll know that later, kind of later on. But no, I think overall, as the tournament, I think it was kind of, as the round, I mean, it was kind of, I think it was a success. But again, moving on towards the second to last game on the second day, which was the Waratahs versus Crusaders, definitely the upset of the round by some margin. I mean, I don't think anyone predicted this in terms of, even like look at like Super Brood. I think there's only like one person who probably predicted this. So like it's not even like
probably pressed the wrong button.
Exactly. So
thinking it was the Crusaders.
Yeah, trust me. Like this is definitely a game which I don't think anyone saw coming, because I mean you have to remember that the Waratahs didn't have the best of games really against the Reds in that opening round. And the Crusaders, yes, they obviously did lose to the Chiefs, but there was a lot to go off in that game. So it felt like it was kind of going to be a one-sided game in this area. But no, the Waratahs beat the Crusaders 37 points to 24, which is by some margin. And for what I actually saw in a stat-wise, it's the biggest defeat the Crusaders have had since like 2017, or so it was 2017-18, something like that. So it's pretty impressive actually what they've been able to do there. In that it's a big win for the Waratahs, because now they can kind of build off this. And it's kind of funny in a way, because Rob Petty, of course, loses against the Waratahs, his own team. So it's Yeah, there's a lot of stories in this one, but yeah, just kind of just tell me your thoughts on the Waratahs and just how impressed you were on them, because I think that's really the main team we should be talking about in this.
Well, I know that Jed Holloway started off the game by saying if there was one way to describe what the Waratahs are going to be like in the first 20 minutes, quick.
Yeah,
And they did take the pace to the Crusaders. They tried to really just push the tempo early on, and I thought that they were extremely clinical. They took their chances when they were there. The Crusaders, they weren't quite the same Crusaders side as last year, and of course, there's still going to be the case of everyone going, now that Razor's gone, that's why they're going badly. And I guess you can agree to a certain extent, but we've also got to remember, like, they're two guys, 9 and 10, they were both 20 years of age with
yeah, it's
hardly
the
any
injuries from
Super
her.
Rugby
Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
And then you've got the guy who does have experience, who's come back from injury, David Harvili. You would have thought he had a light blue kit on because he was doing absolutely everything in his power
yeah.
to not help the Crusaders,
It was
unfortunately. It's
bad.
just sometimes
Yeah,
you have one of those games, and he had one of those games. And then they had the two reserves off the bench, Ryan Crotty, Dallas McLeod, two centres, but they keep Harvili on the field. It was a little bit of an
yeah,
interesting choice for later on. But the Waratahs, like I said, they took their chances. They were clinical when it mattered most. And defensively, they were really holding on at certain times. Of course, there's always going to be that late fight back from the Crusaders, whether they're 20 years of age or whether they've got one of the 35-year-old players out
yeah.
there. They're still going to have that mentality of we can take a side down in the final moments. The Tars didn't allow it. And now, sitting there with a win on the board over the Crusaders early, they've got Highlanders next week. That is going to be a good game because
Yeah.
once again we get to see how they match up. If the Highlanders are in form compared to the Crusaders, who a lot of people would say currently in a little bit of an out of form patch, how do they match up with another Kiwi team?
Yeah. Like next week, I mean, like again, we're obviously not doing a preview here, but just looking at the fixtures now, it is like there's going to be some very good games there, going off what we've seen in the first two rounds. But yeah, I do agree with you. The Waratahs just definitely just stood their ground and just really were the better team. I think throughout most of the game, Crusaders had a very hard time coming into it, but also they made too many mistakes to kind of come back into the game anyway. It was kind of their own fault in a way for some of the tries. So. Yeah, look, it's a very impressive win there for the Waratahs. Like a very impressive win, which, like I said beforehand, they can definitely build on for the rest of the season. But yeah, for the final two, again for Sunday, we had two games there. The first one being Chiefs versus Brumbies. This is probably the most kind of clear victory I think out of the bunch, and it's definitely not the one you would have thought would have been a clear victory because these two teams normally have been very close together actually in terms of the score lines throughout the years. But yeah, no, the Chiefs just broke away really with 46 points to 12. And yeah, there's a lot of good talking points here for the Chiefs now. I mean, again, the Brumbies, let's actually talk about the Brumbies first. The Brumbies had some good moments in there, like Corey Toole getting a double once more. Like it's just, he is someone who I definitely believe can make the Wallabies. I think I would actually start him as the 11 for the Wallabies. Maybe that's a bit bold shout to say early on, but I honestly think he's that good where I put him at the 11 spot. And then like you can obviously figure out what you want to do in terms of 15, 14. But I think Corey Toole, that's the 11 spot for him right now, I think, in the Wallabies. I think Joe Schmidt will be impressed by him for what he's seen. But I mean, that second try he scored, if like the chip and chase and then the ball literally went directly towards his hand. I was like, oh, you couldn't even script. It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, he just blew past them, and I was really impressed by that one. But yeah, just kind of what was your take on the Chiefs, however, for this game?
They just win out in the early stages, a little bit similar to what I mentioned about the Waratahs in terms of trying to push the pace. And it did seem like it was going to be a bit of back and forth early on. But after that first kind of 20 minutes or so, the Chiefs just kept on scoring consistent tries. And definitely in that second half as well, that was somewhere that the clinicalness of their side just started to show more and more. They've got a good combo in Rowan McKenzie. And also the fact that they've still got, a Tinainana Satoro in the back line. Liam Coombs-Fabling, I thought, was heavily involved throughout this contest. And then you've got the forward pack who are also muscling up when it mattered most. The Brumbies, to just say it in one word, they were outplayed in this game. And it wasn't what anyone expected. I know for my prediction, I said that this was going to be an extremely close game. And I was worried that it was going to be split by only like maybe 3 points, but it wasn't even
Yeah.
split by only 3 tries in the end.
Exactly, exactly, and that's the thing. Is I even predicted the Brumbies to win this game because I actually thought in Australia they could have some kind of advantage towards them, but no, that was definitely wrong in that sense. And I think I think the player I was actually most impressed by in this one again, I think was both scrum halves. I think both Xavier Rowe and Cortis Latimer, I think really stood up in this one. I mean, Xavier Rowe, he's been very impressive actually. I think throughout the season so far. I mean, he's never he's creating like. This is a bold thing to say early on because again he's had 2 impressive games I think for the Chiefs, but I don't think he'll make the All Black selection, but he will definitely put his name in the conversation. I think for what he's done so far, I think he's been very impressive. And then you have someone like Cortis Latimer, who is again another player who, in a weird way, is like been more talked about than Xavier Rowe in a way. And again, that's obviously there's a lot of scrum halves out there with Vakataba having a good season. You have who else? You have Cam Morgan, of course, doing pretty well. We'll talk about him very shortly. Finley Christie hasn't had. He's only really played one game so far, so there's not much really to judge off him at the moment. And then there's who else? Mitch Drummond, but he's too old. I'm not gonna. I don't think he's in the conversation. Same with TJ Perenara. It's like these players, like they're not really. It's really more the three which they have to go by. And I think Xavier Rowe and Cortis Latimer are putting their hand up now. And yeah, I thought, yeah, they looked really impressive. But
one thing I will say about Xavier Rowe, though, I'm not the biggest fan of the halfbacks who try and milk the penalties by holding a player in the breakdown. I know that ginger fella from the Blues is pretty good at it. Maybe that's why I wasn't selecting him for the ABs. But just those, you know the ones I'm talking about, don't you, Tim? And it's fine when your team's doing it, but when you watch them and they're just, I've just all the ones that pass the ball into the guy who's trying to stay underneath. I'm like, come on, mate, just run over him.
I do like I think about Xavier Rowe. Like I think in this game, what I thought was better from him, going off the previous game he played against the Crusaders, was that his passing I thought was a lot better in this one, and his box kicking. I thought because this game really there was a lot of kicks, and I think he got was it him or I think it was him actually. He got a 50-22 in this game. So there's a lot of good things that go by him. Again, it's so early, obviously, to go on in terms of this season because there's so many more rounds that go off. But yeah, there's a lot there, and there's obviously more that it can build off in that sense. But yeah, going on towards the final game, of course, which was the Hurricanes versus the Reds, and yeah, this game was probably the game of the round in my opinion. I think this is like without a shadow of a doubt, the one because the scoreline did end 38 points to 33 in favor of the Hurricanes. But of course, this was the first time throughout the season we saw the scenario of the golden point rule being played. And yeah, both teams, of course, finished on 33 points. But yeah, the Hurricanes, with a one-man down, got the victory in Melbourne. So yeah, kind of just before we get into the whole red card situation, just tell me your perspective on the game as a whole. Just kind of what was your take on it?
Well, it was just a really good game to finish out the round because normally you remember the first game of the round and you remember the last, and people will remember that game for quite some time, definitely because of the golden point. They have to say, I think the Reds made a mistake in terms of picking what direction they wanted to go rather than picking to go for the kickoff because in that scenario, you've got to force your opposition deep into their own territory. From then, when they made their decision, I felt the Hurricanes were going to win it. Because unfortunately, you're so susceptible to giving away a penalty or something just out from your own goal line. And yeah, in the end, the Hurricanes getting over the line. The last minute try from Tossi, the big number 18. And yeah, there was just a lot of good moments throughout this game. Both sides putting on epic fights and scoring some brilliant tries along the way. I'm glad that it went down to the wire. We originally thought that it may be a little bit one-sided in favour of the Hurricanes, but the Reds showed that it was anything but that. And there were multiple times that the Hurricanes would have been extremely nervous because they did have to make up some ground to even get it to golden point time.
Yeah, no, this is really a game of, I want to say a game of two halves, but to be fair, both teams played brilliantly in both. It's one of those like where the Reds straight off the bat kind of were I think they were the better team in that first half, the Reds, even though like the Hurricanes did end up leading the game at the half, just with that tries they got at the very end. I still think the Reds were the better team, just because the tries they actually got from that in that first half are really impressive. Like I was really impressed by like kind of the play in terms of like kind of finding spaces within the Hurricanes But yeah, no, going into the second one, of course, that's when the game opened up a bit bigger in a way, and yeah, just allowed the teams to have more running chances in a way. And we saw some good tries in there. I'm trying to think what was the best try. I mean, tell me if you can think of what was the best try yourself. But I can't think of like there wasn't. Was there an outstanding try in this one? Like I'm trying to think if there was a like
There were a lot of
and
good tries.
Wilson.
I don't know whether any of them were classed as
No, there wasn't like an
brilliant.
outstanding one. I think.
Probably see the
Maybe.
highlights after this and then
Yeah, I
remember
have to.
one that.
I don't know why, but the one I'm thinking of is Josh Fluke's try, where he scores in the right hand corner. Like I think it was like a good build up play for
Oh
that
yeah.
one. But no, I think overall it was a good game in terms of both teams. But of course, the defining moment in this game, which kind of also set it apart from the golden point rule, of course, was that red card for Jordie Barrett. And I'll be honest, when I first saw this, I was like, that's a red card. I was like, this has to be a red card. It was like I know obviously they have to do the whole thing of yellow card. We're gonna check, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be a red card, guys. So I even wrote it on my chat even beforehand because I was just so confident that they're gonna give it as a red because it's head on head. Like there's no way you don't give it a red for that situation, and it's one of those where fortunately for the Hurricanes, it didn't cost them. But yeah, I mean, what was your kind of thoughts on that Like, was it the right? I mean, I know it's obviously the right decision, but like, what was your kind of thoughts on everything that happened there?
See, the Hurricanes, they almost made a crucial mistake there. But luckily for them, because of the Super Rugby rules, of course, 20-minute red card. So you do get the man back near the end of the game. And I think that extra man that they had on the field of Salesi Reasi was extremely crucial. Although there was one point where I thought he may have cost them the game when he did get held up only a couple meters out from the try line. He likes to run very upright, Reasi, doesn't he?
He does.
He does become a little bit susceptible to a rolling maul. It's kind of like Will Jordan, isn't it? But Will Jordan, I always watch Will Jordan run and I go, why is he moving so fast? Because there's no arms involved. It's kind of like he has the T-Rex arms, but he just kind of jiggles, or not jiggles, but just kind of wiggles and he flies forward. But yeah, I think that the Hurricanes, they'll be hurting without Jordie Barrett next week. We saw another one red card, I think, throughout the round. That was Jared Profit for the Chiefs. That one was a lot clearer. He just gave him the headbutt to the head pretty much.
Yeah, that was bad.
Pretty much
that was
made it easy enough to work out. But yeah, it'll be interesting because I know a lot of people get a little bit confused with the fact that they're like, well, that's a clear red. Why is he giving it as a yellow? But of course, to try and speed up the game and make the decision correct, they give that yellow, they do the report, and then it's the TMO's decision to upgrade it, which most cases, definitely in cases like those ones, we will see it upgraded. But yeah, luckily it didn't cost the Hurricanes in their case, and getting away with the slight win in the end of golden point time.
It was impressive. Like that, I mean, that game overall was definitely the game of the round. And yeah, I mean, for the Hurricanes, like I'm trying to think like if there was an outstanding player throughout this round, like if there was like one player that we could mention, like, because I just think we should say at least one because it's the super round. Like, if there was like one player that you could mention that just like I think
Roy Gard was impressive.
Yeah,
for the Hurricanes.
I was going to mention like Roy Gard. I thought was very good in terms. I would say he was my man of the match in terms of that game. I thought Tim McDermott was pretty good as well in that one. But
you're probably thinking Satutu for his 3, are you?
I think that's the obvious answer there. That's the thing. I don't think Satutu, like, yes, he obviously played a good game and had 3 tries, but I don't think it was like outstanding in the way that he got them. I know there's a weird thing to say.
You may have him, but I have one from Moana Pacifica as my standout player.
Okay.
Finney, out on that left wing, about 150 metres made throughout that game. He was just everywhere. And then I think he ended up getting hit in the head. So he had to go off, and then he came back on and still made more metres when he returned, if I'm correct. Although I know there were a few head knocks taking place throughout that game, but that's always going to happen when the two Pacific Island sides go head-to-head. But yeah, I thought he was absolutely brilliant out on that wing, and I hope no other team steals him next year because that's what's happened with Levi Moore.
True. Yeah, and gosh, not Levi Moore, but also I forgot his name now.
Tawa Nawai.
Yeah, I don't know why, but yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I think I'll actually go with a Rebels player here. I'd probably go with either Connor Gordon or Andrew Kellaway because I thought both of them were outstanding in that game for the Rebels. I'll probably go Connor Gordon because I thought he even had that intercept try where if you saw the try by the way, he kind of when he was running, he kind of looked like he slowed down. It was either the grass was so heavy that he was having a hard time running, or it's just I don't know, his legs kind of gave way and he was just looking behind. But no, I thought he was pretty impressive throughout that game. So I'd probably say he's on my player of the round in that way. But yeah, no. Before we kind of move on then towards the LA Sevens, just letting you guys know in terms of our predictions that we made, obviously in terms of our preview, I believe we both got 4 out of 6 in terms of our predictions. I believe the ones that I got wrong was I said the Brumbies to win against the Chiefs, and I said the Crusaders to beat the Waratahs. Whereas for you, of course, you said You said the Western Force to beat the Rebels.
Force would.
Yeah, and then of course, both saving our case where we both said the Crusaders to win against the Waratahs. So yeah, I mean 4 out of 6, not that bad. I believe in total you're still ahead by 1 going off the previous round in that way. So I'll have to get you in that way. I don't know. I'll have to see if I can jump you in that way for the next one. But I mean, LA Sevens. This is probably the most wild one we've ever seen in terms of the results, I think, in a very, very long time. We're not going to see this often in terms of the teams that make it to this to the latter stages as well. But you watched obviously more of the Sevens this week compared to me. So just what was your take overall? I'm trying to think of a way to do this because I think there was so much that happened in this Sevens that I kind of want to cover a lot of it. Let's just first start with the groups. What happened in the group stages? What was your take on everything that happened in there? Were you surprised with the teams that got left out, the teams that topped the group? What was your take on all that?
Once again, we saw New Zealand and South Africa both missing out alongside the Samoans. Now, the reason I bring up Samoa is in their pools last year, they finished top 6 times. They haven't done it a single time yet throughout this competition. But overall, I think the pools went pretty similar to how most people anticipated them in terms of Fiji making it through, Argentina, France, Ireland. They were a little bit of a dark horse throughout this competition and almost got the job done, but they were able to beat the Argentines for the first time in a very long time. Argentina defeated in a game of a rugby sevens, and they were nearly defeated in the 5th place playoff game by the Fijians had it not been from Marcos Maneta scoring the first and the last try of the game. Help the Pumas seal the deal. But like you said, overall, it's been a round of surprises. Yes. Spain beating Fiji in the quarterfinals, and that advanced them further than they've ever been in a sevens competition before. And they almost pulled off the win up against Great Britain, who had about 6 injuries by the end of that final up against France. They were losing players left, right, and centre. And you know it's bad when they look to the bench and go, right, which one of you guys has the least injuries? Because you're going to have to go back out there. Sofalaran had to make his way onto the field while his knee was pretty much hanging off the side of his body. But
it's bad.
A lot of action throughout the sevens. I could talk for 20 minutes straight about what went on, but I won't. What did you think, Tim?
I was first surprised in terms of the group stages to see Spain, I think, finished 2nd in that group. I think none of us would have predicted that, even anyone else around the world would have predicted that one. But Great Britain, I think they finished 3rd in their group, which is kind of what we said. I believe 3rd place, and the other one was, what was it? Was it Australia? Was it or US? I know one of them because it was in the other group.
It would have been Australia.
Yeah. So I should look now. I think
it's actually the other group, the top one. We had the 3rd team go through because we got to see Great Britain.
Ireland. Oh, there you go. So it was Australia who topped the group, USA, then New Zealand.
But New Zealand missed out on
they missed out on, of course, the goal difference and that's points difference, But it was just one of those where when it came towards the quarterfinals as well, there was a lot of upsets. For every one of them, I don't think every team besides the France one, because it's like I said beforehand, USA, of course, going into the tournament, they want to see someone as favorites because they're hosting the event. But in that France one, going off the back of the previous form, we could definitely say from our knowledge of the Sevens, France were the better team going into that game. So that was kind of the expected result out of all the quarterfinals. But for the other ones, like you mentioned, Ireland beating Argentina, Spain beating Fiji, Great Britain beating Australia, like that's pretty impressive. Like all three of them in that way. And again, for the results we saw in the semis, France just beating Ireland. That was a great game of rugby. Just watched the highlights recently, so that was good. And then, that, of course, like you said, Spain just missing out against Great Britain, and which obviously set up for that final, which was played literally, an hour ago now. So it was very, it's kind of a weird tournament, like outlandish tournament in a way. But of course, France did get the job done, and have won their first Sevens tournaments, I believe. I think they said the stat was like it's their first Sevens tournament in like 17 years. Or I can't remember 19 years. So it's like that's pretty impressive. So obviously a great thing for France rugby, as they're already be hosting the Olympics later this year in Paris. But kind of what was your thoughts on, I guess, that final, and just I guess France, because they deserve obviously to be talked about in that case. But
See, that's the thing. France winning, of course, it was massive for them. But then there's also that little part of me as well that look at the sides that they defeated. And with the exception of Ireland, they didn't beat anyone inside of that top five. Like I said, apart from Ireland, they didn't beat Argentina, didn't beat Fiji. Fiji beat them. Fiji actually beat both of the finalists, but missed out to Spain. That is the unpredictability of Sevens. Great Britain making it through to the final. They lost their first two games, but made it through and snuck through all the way to make it to the final. But I think that France, don't get me wrong, this is a massive achievement, but I think that they still have a little bit to go. They've got to start getting the wins over the likes of Argentina. They need to start beating Fiji when they go head to head rather than losing by that narrow margin. And that will help them massively heading into the Olympics. But once again, taking nothing away from what they were able to do throughout this competition. They had many players step up, not just DuPont, like the news articles are going to be reading, but I think that overall, that's what the commentators straight after the final, they were like, Antoine DuPont has helped, or he's lifted France to a title, and I'm like, but did you see Rabage? Did you see Grandidier throughout the competition? Stephen Perez Martin.
Yeah, he's my favorite player, Grandidier, for the French.
He's always got the English accent.
No, he's just quick. He's just quick off the mark. It's just yes, I mean I suppose so, but that's not really the first one that comes to mind. I just like him as a rugby player. He's just he's electric. But obviously congrats to France. It's gonna be very interesting to see how they kind of go on for the future kind of tournaments that we have. But now that they've won an actual tournament, I think really the next goal, like you mentioned there, nicely, is like where they just need to win against the big teams now. Just prepare them really. Like they can lose. Like they don't have to win the tournaments now. Like they've already done that now. That's good. They have that experience off the back. That's great. Now they just need to beat the big teams in terms of Fiji, New Zealand, Argentina. Like just those big teams in terms of who kind of has done well so far in this series and all that. But it's exciting. It was a good LA Sevens again. I didn't actually. I even before going into this, I didn't actually know it was hosted in the LA Galaxy Stadium, so that was kind of a surprise to me. But didn't see the attendance was as good as you could expect. But again, the next one obviously in Hong Kong is going to be the best in attendance, in my opinion. I think in terms of the amount that you're going to see for at least one tournament. But a great kind of, I guess, like indication of what we may see for the Olympics in terms of the teams stepping up. A lot of upsets that could happen. But credit, by the way, obviously to Great Britain, Spain, and Ireland. Again, like those three just had a ton of upsets in this tournament. So obviously a lot of credit towards them. But that's kind of it really with this episode, guys. Hope you guys obviously enjoyed us talking about Super Rugby and the LA Sevens in terms of our review for both competitions. Again, let us know in the comments what you guys think. Like, what was your thoughts overall? Make sure, guys, to like the video. We'd greatly appreciate that. Subscribe to our channel. And, we'll see you guys next time.